suggest that you do not go out and touch this foam, right? So your average person shouldn't be coming in contact with the foam. So your risk from exposure from this foam release is potentially much smaller than it is from exposures to other everyday products that you might come in contact with.
How many crews do you have working? Did it start on Monday? Are they working around the clock, like all the trucks that are draining the stuff out? And also, do you have to drain the water down in the drains and in the pond itself that may be contaminated now?
Sure. I think I'm going to kick that one over to the Director of Response Services, Chris Hopper, who might be able to provide you with a better answer to that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Please repeat the question.
Sure. Actually, I'm going to ask you to repeat the question, sir, please.
I think, okay. I just want to know how many crews you have working. Did it start like on Monday? Are they working around the clock? And also, will you have to drain the drainage system and the ponds that are nearby there that may be contaminated or likely are contaminated?
So the call, the release initially happened at 5:30 in the morning, and so the fire chief and the town were quick to notify us. Our first responders were here after grabbing some gear and getting on the road at approximately 8:30, and so we started taking action at that point to assess. And so in coordination with MIRA, we have contractors with Clean Harbors, and so they've provided personnel. So we've got probably 10 to 15 personnel initially working on this. It's not round-the-clock operations. But they are, pretty much daylight operations. So they've been some pretty significant long hours doing that. And so focus shifted a little initially. We knew about the presence of foam, so that assessing piece was looking where, foam was apparent, and then taking a look at doing something about that. And so the focus, then became on the hangar once there was no visible foam presence. And then we took a look at the retention ponds, as you've mentioned and gone through it. There's not a plan to drain those completely, and there's continual flow of water that comes in there. It's just not realistic. So what we're doing, the immediate concern is about the foam, and so we're taking actions to manually take care of that, and we're continuing to monitor. So then when we take a look at the systems that it's got in, we want to reduce the presence of the foam or of AFFF in that, so that it doesn't continue to generate foam and be an issue.
And where's all this foam going? How are you getting rid of it?
Well, so we've got Vector trucks that can suck some of that up. We're looking at, we put booms out along that water pathway that you talked about to kind of stop it at different intervals to facilitate that. We've used some tarps to actually kind of cover it up, and so we're trying to, and again, with the public statement went out there, if there is some foam, because it is difficult, it's a challenge to grab that, and we're doing a good job of that, but some of it can blow around in windy conditions, and that's why we've put the warning out that if there is some of that happens, and we're keeping that to a minimum, then for the public to not come in contact with it.
I just want to know where it's being disposed of.
Oh, so right now we collected it. And so there's about 6,000 gallons of material that we've collected. We have it in the frac tank, and that will be disposed of properly and taken off site, and we'll continue to collect that.
Where? Juniper Ridge?
No, I don't know offhand exactly where it's going, but we're collecting it. I'm sorry.
It's going to a burn facility in Texas.
Okay.
Oh, okay. They burned it.
Yep.
Okay.
Your name and title, just for the record.
So my name is Chris Hopper, and I am the Division Director for Response Services for the Maine Department of Environmental Protection. So we're the folks that when there's first an emergency are doing that kind of immediate action is our focus.
Can you break down the timeline of the cleanup process?
Well, like I said, we had people here at 8:30 in the morning, and so basically we're running up until dark. We've run, we've had cleanup operations going. Well, we've had mitigation operations going on. Okay, and we're sensitive to that. We understand that it's not a cleanup, but we're doing our best to make sure that that foam isn't out there, people coming in contact with it, and then we'll take a look at some of the other surfaces that it needs to be cleaned up from. So we're going to continue to operate until we feel satisfied that that's been taken care of. So I'm not going to set a timeline to that, we're going to ensure that we do that.
Since foam degrades over time and becomes more into like a liquid, is it still in its foam form? Is there still threats of it kind of floating around in that form, or has it become more?
We're not seeing, we're constantly assessing that. Every day we're doing it, and we've got folks out there taking a look at it. And so, you know, in looking at it today, we're not seeing as much a presence of foam. We're not seeing today, there's virtually none. The weather is kind of in our favor with that, because it's partially a function of the turbidity, you know, and things mixing to create the foam. And so the weather's on our side. In the meantime, we're making sure in the systems that were mentioned where that ran into, that we're removing the AFFF from that, so there's not the potential to keep generating foam.
Was
Can you
this
go into more detail about the AFFF? Was it leftover from the Navy? Was it new stuff that's been replaced that would be in any airport? Can you tell us a short chain, long chain, PFAS?
I just know it was present in the fire extinguishing system here, and there was a release.
Was there any plan in September to remove all that firefighting foam?
I'm not the best person to speak to that.
Well, I'm Christine Logan. I'm the executive director of MIRA. And yes, the answer is yes, the Navy had a plan. They were going to be removing that foam on September 16th from that hangar. MIRA leases that hangar from the Navy, and it's as a requirement the Navy has until this October to remove that foam from all of their facilities. Our plan at the time when it was going to be taken out, we were looking for alternatives to putting AFFF back in that system and looking for an alternative fire suppression system that would be more environmentally friendly.
So there's not going to be any more firefighter foam in the fall?
No, there won't be any more firefighting foam in that building until it's conveyed to the redevelopment authority, which could be years.
You would bring back firefighter foam?
Well, we're trying not to bring back the firefighting foam. We're looking for alternatives. At this time, there are requirements by code to have a firefighting system, a foam system in there, which is the AFFF. So by code, we do have that in our hangars.
That's National Firefighter Protective Association code, I believe.
NFPA's recommendations,
Yeah.
yes.
And we've heard a couple different stories on that. We've heard that the NFPA code requires the firefighting foam, at least for now. We've also heard that there have been active conversations among some people, some citizens groups, maybe with MIRA, about going to a water-based foam, and that is apparently the movement of the Defense Department in general. So anything more you want to say about that?
No, just that is true. We have been having conversations over the last year looking for other alternatives to effective firefighting systems in these size hangars. And so it is our hope that we can get to something that also is not PFAS-based foam.
Without the foam and, you know, in that time frame, will that hangar be usable? Because, I mean, if there's planes in there, there's also be a fire suppression system.
So the plan in the interim between when the foam was going to be taken out and we could find something else to be put back in, the tenant in there was going to need to defuel and then bring the planes in, and then when they were going to fly them, they'd bring them out and fuel them up.
Do we know how this happened?
A faulty message in the system.
How often is the system tested?
We do yearly testing on the devices and quarterly flow testing.
And when was the last time those tests were done?
Eric, when was, I don't know when the last time, the last quarter? A year ago.
And that's MIRA's responsibility to do the testing?
Yes, it is.
And there was no problem with the last test?
There's no problems with we've had clean tests.
How many times has AFFF been discharged accidentally since MIRA took over the facilities?
We had one other discharge that I'm aware of back in 2019, and that was during a test of the system. So we purposely set off the system that was required for the test, and one of the drains they were supposed to plug all the drains, and one of them was left open, and so that allowed some of the AFFF to escape. But that was in the, more like tens of gallons than how much we have now, and that was collected. No, that was in Hangar 4.
There was one in 2012, was there not?
I believe so. It was before my time. I'm not sure. I could get some information on that though.
All right.
terms of responsibility, you know, has the Navy talked about, I guess, the next steps for getting the rest of the AFFF away from the premises?
They are still planning on coming on the 16th to remove whatever's left and do any cleanup on the removal.
What about the foam in hangar 6? Is there going to be a process to eventually remove that?
We hope so. At the time, it is what's required for us to have and use that and occupy those hangars there and hangar 5. But again, we are actively having conversations looking for alternative options for fire suppression.
So how much foam do you still have on site?
We had about 9,000 gallons altogether, and I think we probably now have 9,000 minus 1,450.
Who's going to pay for the cleanup?
It is Mira's responsibility to pay for the cleanup, but we anticipate it being in the millions, so we are looking for funding sources to help us do that.
What kind of funding sources?
Well, we're looking at, we've tapped into the FAA to see if there's any funding there. We've looked at DEP as well as EPA. We've reached out to our delegation partners to see if there's anything at the federal level that might be able to help us with funding.
It seems like everyone's on city water, I believe, around here. Is there anyone with well water in the area that there's concern?
I could let somebody else. There's nobody on the landing that gets their drinking water from wells.
Okay, but just maybe outside.
I don't know if anybody wants to talk about testing wells.
She's saying downstream there are some other wells.
Sure. There are some private wells to the east of the site. Based on the way that groundwater flows in the area, we don't believe that there's any risk to those wells. There is a series of groundwater extraction wells already on site as part of the ongoing remediation project to intercept any groundwater from the site. But we will be doing some sampling from some of those homes that we've worked with in the past just to ensure that we don't see any impact. The rate of groundwater movement into that area would take a matter of weeks, so it would take quite a long time. So we will be working with those homeowners to identify some locations that we think might be representative. So if there was any kind of migration, those would be the locations we would expect to see at first, just in case. But we really do not think that there's going to be any risk to that area.
Yeah, roughly how much you expect to be able to recover of this firefighting foam? Is it, a fourth, a half, or what are you hopeful for here?
I think it would be difficult to estimate the quantities. As was mentioned, it was about 50,000 gallons of water that went with the foam, which significantly dilutes it. A lot of it is probably already moved through the system. So the primary focus is going to be, as said, making sure that there isn't some sort of residue that continues to actually create the foamy substance.
Will you be testing in the Androscoggin and Harpswell Cove?
We have been testing in those areas already as part of our monitoring, recognizing that this was a site that could potentially have contributed to levels in fish tissue in that area. And it's certainly an area that has a lot of interest for shellfishing as well. So we will be taking additional samples as part of our ongoing fish studies and river studies that we do in the area.
Is that interrupting any of the shellfishing going on right now? Have they been advised to not get any of the shellfish clamming going on around here?
I believe that the areas that we think might have been connected to any of the discharge are already closed.
And does the water treatment plant have something to get rid of PFAS like you can buy, like some homeowners have bought some elaborate systems? Or
They do not.
Okay.
There's only one facility in the state that is currently working on trying to install PFAS treatment as part of their ongoing operations. So that is something that many of the wastewater treatment plants in Maine are very interested in. It's extremely expensive. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars per facility to install PFAS treatment. There's no federal or state discharge standard for PFAS. EPA has said that they'll be issuing human health criteria in the fall. That's what we're planning to use to establish discharge standards in the future. But in the meanwhile, many of the treatment plants are looking at how to budget for installing that kind of treatment in anticipation that there will be limits.
are you testing for PFAS in the town drinking water as well?
Under the state's drinking water program, that is a requirement.
Okay.
You talked about the baseline here about existing contamination. So, you're going to be measuring it, whatever the future levels would be against the baseline. You might be easier to grab in the Navy. Can you talk a little bit what it is right now, or as of Sunday?
Yep, I might turn that over to a couple of our project managers for the site if one of you would like to address that.
I will.
All right, thanks, Ivor.
Hi, I'm Ivor McLeod. I am the Maine DEP's project manager in the Division of Remediation. I work with EPA and the Navy to clean up all the Navy-related contamination. We started sampling for PFAS around 2009 here, but really got into high gear with it about 2015-16. Groundwater varies, the PFAS in the groundwater. We have some high concentrations in the groundwater down by Hangar 4, over by the old fuel farm, the newer fuel farm way up the north part of the base. Thousands of parts per trillion in the groundwater in various areas. We do all the new housing that's going in over there. We have the groundwater here is very shallow, so we say if you interact with groundwater, you have to test it for PFAS. And some of them are non-detect, some areas 30 to 40, so it really varies depending on where it is on the base. But that is surface water. I can't recall what we've been seeing in surface water. It's been a few years. It's groundwater. We have very definitive standards, and now we have the MCL. Surface water, neither state nor EPA have standards for PFAS, so the numbers are somewhat meaningless. But I think we're seeing in dozens to parts per trillion. Actually, I saw. Carol, how much? Okay, yeah, stormwater, several thousand. So, we see it more in the industrial areas.
And there's been no tests at any of the residential wells nearby?
Well,
private wells,
no. We have tested. There are the residential wells Melanie mentioned before. Some of those have been sampled 2 or 3 times since 2016. They were all below standards.
Which standards?
Yeah, exactly. The standards at the time they were tested. So originally that was 70, then it was 20, and now we're looking at 4. And I believe there are some that are over 4. But again, this is the MCL is so new. We're just starting to talk with the Navy, saying, hey, we never had to determine if there was a connection between the base and those homes. We don't think there is, based on hydrology. We have to discuss it more. There are also some wells at the north, private wells on the north side of the base, along where Shaw's is and the mobile home park. And we actually have, I think there was only one well we were able to sample back in 2016. We have to get permission because it's all private property, and some of them said, no, we don't want you to test our well. I think it was Big Al's that might have, not Big Al's, the burger place, that we were able to sample, and we didn't see it. So.
And Ivor, would it be fair to say that any of the data that we have, all of our historic sampling results, all of that's a matter of public record? And so if there's something that anyone is interested in, either we or the EPA can provide that.
Yep.
The EPA is sending us all back to you.
Okay. Well, we have all of it too.
Is it posted online, or is it something that we need to request?
No, it's kind of, well, we have reports I can make available. We have a system that is somewhat unwieldy for the work we do. It's hard to get our documents in there in a format that's very searchable. But I am it's much faster to contact me. I say, yep, here it is, I'll email it to you.
Great.
So I can give you my email later. And then the actual data is in a database that is millions and millions of records. It's huge. It takes a while to pull the actual data out. So you ask us for a send a data request, which you can do online, but it'll take a while to get it back to you.
You said you were going to communicate updates. What is the channels you will use? And how can we make sure we get the fastest, best information
Sure, that's a great question. I think we have all been discussing that it would be up on one of our websites. We recognize DEP seems to be the place that everybody is turning to for answers, so we'll likely be trying to consolidate what we have from the other agencies and having it in a single place, or at least linked from our site to other places where you'd be able to get that information.
Is it possible to, in addition to the website, to send emails to Mira, to the town, so that we can react quickly to questions that are coming in?
Sure, yes, we could do that.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Sandy, we will be having it on our website. So any update that goes there, it'll go on our website as well.
Great. Thanks.
Just a question concerning Mira. I was talking to Professor David Page about the situation, and he cast some doubts on Mira's ability just because it is, he described it as like a real estate company that's in charge of leasing out, this property. He questioned the ability for Mira to actually, take care of toxic chemicals and, when this is still a factor. I'm wondering, are there any changes that can be made to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
So I'm going to kind of say a little bit of what I said before, which is we are capable of maintaining the hangars and their systems. When there is, and it's the system that we have to have in place in order to have occupancy of these hangars. When there is a spill, you're right, Mira is not the ones to handle a hazardous waste spill, and which is why we partner with DEP and EPA and other partners to come in and help us with that.
Could someone talk a little bit about the fuel in other places? Go ahead. I didn't know someone was starting over there. Go on.
Sorry, can you clarify, is the foam a requirement or is that just a recommended method?
It's required. So it's a recommendation from the National Fire, NFPA, National Fire Protection Agency, and that recommendation is adopted by the town of Brunswick as their code, and that's what we have to follow, is that code.
That's a state mandate too, though, is it not?
Yes.
Getting the
Yes.
hint from the chief there. Okay.
You said that Mira would be updating the cleanup process on its website. There were some concerns brought up how businesses and other tenants were not immediately notified and directly notified on Monday. God forbid something happens again. Will Mira be changing its process in the case of an emergency?
So we're always looking to do better. In this case, the release happened around 5:30 in the morning. It took a while for us to get the right people in place and to understand what the situation was. We put something on our website just as a quick announcement at around 10:30 in the morning saying that there was a release of the AFFF foam in Hangar 4. And then it took us the rest of the day to kind of get everybody together, get Clean Harbors on board, and really understand the extent of what was happening. And then around 4:30 that afternoon on Monday, we put out another announcement on our website that gave that as much information as we had at the time. And at that point, then the DEP was on board by Tuesday morning, and we were, again, assessing. It was a ever-moving target in terms of what was happening. I also want to say that if it had been something that was a immediate risk to the public, meaning if it was in your drinking water or something, that would have been our first call. But at the time, our most urgent matter was, what are we dealing with, where is it going, and what are the most necessary steps that we need to take immediately to take care of the problem.
Why wouldn't you have done right away a general media release among all the media here? We would reach pretty quickly a good part of the state. No offense, but I don't think there's one reporter here who probably makes a daily check of your website. But if you were to do a general email release, the word would have gotten out much quicker.
And I will take that into consideration, and we can certainly do that for another time.
I would think, with all due respect, I think that would be a gimmick, Christine. I mean, that should be pretty basic.
Does Mira have direct contact info for the local businesses?
Yeah, well, we have a distribution email for most people on the landing who want to be on that distribution list.
So it's an opt-in
said this
system.
at the beginning and couldn't hear because of the plane, but what is the succinct message to Brunswick residents who are worried about the public water supply?
It's a, an opt-in system. So it's 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 an o
Hello, I'm Amy LaChance. I'm the drinking water program manager for the Maine CDC, and I oversee the public drinking water in the state. The CDC is confident that there is no impact from the released material that took place on Monday to the Brunswick Topsom Water District drinking water. There are no restrictions on the drinking water, and the water is safe to drink and use.
Now, what about in a couple weeks? I think for are you confident that there will be no impact, period?
So there is no direct pathway through the groundwater for the spill area to reach the Jordan Avenue well field, which is one of the sources of drinking water for the Brunswick Topsom Water District. That well field was not in operation on Monday, has not been in operation since that time. They were utilizing a well field that is distant from this area and will continue to use it. Out of an abundance of caution, we will make sure that that well field is not put back into operation until such time that we have investigated further and have samples that meet all regulatory standards.
So when DEP said they discontinued, or the district discontinued use of that well, they had discontinued it a long time ago?
Well, you can maybe ask the general manager, but all I know is it was not in use on Monday at any time and has not been in use since that time. So,
What was the name of that well field again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Jordan Avenue well field.
Thank you.
Commissioner, could you talk a little bit about the fuel, the AAA or AFFF in other places in Maine, and if this changes how it will be used, stored, tested, anything like that?
Sure. So there was a change to Maine statute a couple of years ago. So things that were added to Maine's law are that if there is a release of AFFF anywhere in the state, DEP is required to be notified within 24 hours, that there can be no intentional release for testing or training purposes. So if, for instance, one of these systems is going to be tested and any of the foam needs to be released from the system, all of that needs to be contained and properly disposed of, not released to a wastewater treatment system, for example. There is a prohibition on the sale and distribution of new supplies of AFFF unless it is required by some type of federal requirement. So, for example, if there are military planes and ships that, as part of their federal specifications for that equipment, are required to have the PFAS foam to meet those specifications, that is allowed under law. They can buy that material, but otherwise no one could buy new stocks of PFAS containing AFFF. The remaining stocks in state, we attempted to do a survey of around 2019, 2020. We sent out, in coordination with Maine Emergency Management Agency, a survey to all of the fire departments asking them to report to us what they had in stock. We've also notified them all that they should be very careful about storage. There has been discussion about whether or not to do a collection and destruction program. Some other states have been doing that over the last several years. Until recently, the only destruction option that was available was incineration, which is basically just moving our public health concern potentially to some other region of the country. And so at the time, we recommended continuing to safely store the materials, only use them when absolutely necessary. And we are now getting estimates from the state of New Hampshire. They're doing a collection and destruction program. My understanding is they're only doing about 10,000 gallons, and those are being sent to a facility in Ohio that does supercritical water oxidation. So our previous estimate in 2020-ish about the cost to incinerate all of Maine's stocks of AFFF was about $2 million. Supercritical water oxidation is going to be an incredibly expensive way to manage those waste materials. I could ballpark what I think the total statewide cost would be, but we are working on getting that estimate because I expect that as a result of this incident, there will probably be significant interest in discussing whether or not to pursue a collection and destruction program in the future.
Is the facility in Texas, is that an
center. I'm not sure exactly the details.
Are there other AAA, AFFF fire systems at various other hangars, across the state, or is this a special case?
I believe that there probably are. I mean, we have other military airports as well in the state. So there is potentially other material being stored in locations also as well at like the oil terminal facilities.
So is the airport still considered military, even though it's, Navy style here anymore?
So a new military hangar might have certain requirements requiring AFFF foam. There's no requirement that the existing stocks be removed. So none of these hangars are subject to any requirement that they cannot continue to have and use the AFFF that they already have in place. And so if there are requirements that they have fire suppression systems, those are requirements that are implemented by, again, the NFPA, potentially by Department of Defense. And so it all depends on what the use of the facility is, what governs what kind of suppression system they need to have.
You have a $2 billion estimate for incineration. That implies where all the AFFF is in Maine.
We do not. So, if you look at the PFAS task force report from 2020, it includes all of the survey results that we received from the fire departments at that time. I can't remember what the response rate was, but it was pretty low. And so we just did a conservative estimate based on what responses we did get.
Is there any movement to actually try and figure out exactly how much of this stuff there is out there?
I think that would be a conversation that probably the legislature might want to have. If they want to require fire departments to inventory and report that, that would be up to them. We don't have the authority to require that right now.
Do you think that's important?
I think what's most important is that the facilities that do have it are being careful about how they're storing it until otherwise something else is available to do with it.
But is the military moving away from using that foam?
Yes. Yes. Yes, there have been federal defense spending legislation that required the military and EPA to look into alternatives. There are now some alternatives that have been identified that are available for certain situations.
Do you know why the NFPA would still recommend this?
I don't know.
And then what would the process be if you have to go through like the town of Brunswick, right? The code requires you to adopt the recommendation.
I might as well step up.
What would that process be like to not have to adopt the recommendation of the NFPA? How do you?
So it's a very complicated process. NFPA develops the standards, and there are national committees on all the different boards. And from there, for instance, the state of Maine adopts two of the codes. They adopt the 101 Life Safety Code and NFPA 1, the Fire Prevention Code. Any of the NFPA standards within those codes, by default, become the law. In our case, the town of Brunswick adopts both of those codes into our ordinances, basically so that we can have local control and enforcement of those codes. But once again, any of the NFPA standards within those codes then become what we have to follow and enforce. In order to change that, technically and it goes by code cycle. I should also mention that. The newest code cycle is not what's adopted by the state of Maine. We're always a code cycle or two behind that. So any changes that take place nationally, once it's reviewed at the state level and the legislature takes those recommendations and makes any changes within that standard, then they adopt it as state law. For instance, removing the requirement for residential sprinkler systems for 1 and 2 family dwellings. That's in the code, but the state of Maine removes that. The town of Brunswick, we adopt the same standard that the state has, and so that we can be on the same page and follow the same standard that they have.